members of Congress, we get this information in committees and all those kinds of things. And the fact that we're stonewalled on these issues, I think is completely unacceptable. And it shows bad faith from a government that, believe me, has got something to hide.
So we are here today with Dean Allison, Member of Parliament for Niagara West. Dean, welcome to Northern Perspective.
Thanks for having me on the show. It was great to meet you guys.
Oh, you as well. So Dean has been a Member of Parliament for how long?
Just celebrated my 20th anniversary, or would it be birthday? It wouldn't be birthday. I guess it's an of back in June of this summer. And it's been a very exciting, very interesting time. I've been so grateful to have the opportunity to do it.
Well, and we're lucky to have Dean on the show. The Niagara West riding is fairly close to Flamborough-Glanbrook, and now there's North Brant that's now going to be in that riding after the next election due to all the riding changes. So it's constantly changing world in politics, that's for sure, and we're hoping to change the color of some of the ridings around here as well. So, but anyhow. It's going to be really interesting for a lot of people to know, Dean, because you're probably one of the longest tenured members of Parliament we've had on the show. Why did you get into politics in the first place?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think one of the things that, I was a small business guy, and one of the things I felt as Canadians that we could do better, right? I think we have got all the ingredients to be the best country in the world. What I thought it was lacking was management, right? At the end of the day. So you think about a very highly educated workforce. You think about how rich we are in resources, and the list goes on and on. I mean, our proximity to the U.S. trade deals with the European Union. We got access to most of the world's markets in terms of goods and services. So highly educated workforce, but yet it always seemed like we were punching below our weight. And so I figured that I could complain about it, or I could actually do something about it. And so kudos to you guys for actually stepping up and doing something about it versus just complaining. Because a lot of people complain. We hear it all the time. We hear it at the grocery stores, we hear where we are. But sometimes it takes a little more effort to get involved, right? And it doesn't even have to be politics, it's TV involvement, et cetera, et cetera. So I figured that one of the things I would do that. So as a business person, I was the president of the local Chamber of Commerce, president of the local hospital foundation. We raised a bunch of money for Westlake Memorial Hospital, about $12.5 million at the time, which is large. And so my thought process of politics was just an extension of community service. Obviously more to be asked, because that was not optional in terms of, you go when you want to go. You have to go when you're supposed to go and have to go. But it really was, I think if you ask most members of Parliament, most people that run for office, they give you a similar answer. They feel like it's a part of giving back to the community, participating.
So on that, you wanted to make a difference. How would you evaluate yourself? Have you made a difference?
I think, it's always frustrating. Certainly I would say that the work we get to do at the riding level. So, you're in power. So we've been in power, haven't been in power for the last 8 or 9 years. I would say that the work that we're able to do at the riding level is incredible in terms of what you get to help people with. CRA is a bit of a monster these days. I mean, I read some stats that maybe the wait times of people getting back to you are sort of unprecedented. If you email and you call and you'd be waiting for days for response. We work at trying to help people. In fact, people that are trying to move into their CPP and OES. And I think, there's a whole bunch of government programs that, quite frankly, people sort of go, what do we do? That government's, I don't know where to start. And the other thing that's nice about being a member of Parliament is a lot of people come to us, even though the issue may not be federal in nature. And I feel that's an honor if people will come to you. And part of it's because I'm going to guest profile in the community and people see you. But I remember one time people came to us and said, hey, we have a child on our street who's deaf and we don't know where to go or how to do it. We really have to get a sign for deaf child. And so we walked them through and gave them numbers, helped them, get to town hall and figure out who they should talk to. So I think it's always an honor, right? If people come to you and say, we have an issue and you're able to help them, I think that would be great. The other example, and I kind of joke about this, was that Roy Green, when he was able to do the show, he called me up one day, because we'd been on a show and talked about various things, and a lady had been registered as dead through CRA. It was obviously was a tip in the box.
Yeah.
And, one thing people may not know, if you're dead, you don't get any government program. I say that in jest. And so she couldn't access any programs. And she'd been to CRA back over and over and over again, nonstop, and just couldn't get the response. So this wasn't like, okay, we haven't talked to CRA. Dean, can you help us out? He called us on the show, because I think he was doing like a 2 or 3 hour format, or maybe longer, on the show. He calls at the beginning of the show. We talked to the lady, got her information, and then we called CRA to our contacts. And we actually raised this lady from the death.
Literally.
So I say that in jest, because that's, what are some of the issues that people have? It's just, it's like, who do I talk to? What department is it? Is it provincial? Is it municipal? And, when you spend any time in politics and learn about it, you understand these things. But for the average Canadian, man, it's overwhelming to think, where do I start? And I love, so I love going to schools, and we talk about, and any teachers that teach civics, I think, thank you. Because, with this garbage, who's responsible for garbage pickup, who's responsible for education. So those are all the things that I think, if you thought about them logically, maybe you'd be able to figure it out. But, where you start from. So I think that's, maybe there could be some overlap, right? We've got different layers of government. We have a regional government here in Niagara that also factors in as well. So then it gets a little merged between municipal and regional, who handles what. But I think that's one of the advantages of being a member parliament, is you get to see all levels, you work with all levels, and so that you can direct people to the appropriate spots.
So you mentioned education and, people teaching civics. One of the things that we have found is that there is I will say, severe, and I would say even critical lack of knowledge within the Canadian population as it pertains to how our government actually runs. I remember being in public school, being taught about the government. Really, it was, we're in a Westminster style parliament. You can have coalition governments, you can have majority governments, and there wasn't a lot of meat to actually how it runs. So one of the things that we accidentally started doing on our channel, and it's where we found that we picked up a lot of traction, was we started talking about parliamentary procedure and, what is a point of order and what is a bill, what is a motion, and all of that. Do you find that is, really creating problems within our democracy, the fact that people are not, more informed of how our government works?
Yeah, no, I think it's, what I tell people who go to schools is whether you like government or not. So it's not a question if you like it or you're interested. It affects every part of your life, right? And so, if someone doesn't show up and pick up my garbage, what do I do about that? Who do I call? What is the process? And so I just tell people that it is so important to be informed, to find out. That doesn't mean you have to get involved and join a party or work on a campaign, but it's 100% correct. People have no idea how the system works or where to go to maybe try to affect change. It's bureaucratic in nature, right? And you have lots of things going on where you think, well, there's my one voice in the matter, but it's all part about being involved in the process, right? And so I would completely agree. I think most people don't understand how it works. And I don't think that, I think the younger you are, I think the less you think government affects your lives.
Right.
Then you get older, you start paying taxes. You go, wait a minute.
100%. Yeah.
I think I'm maybe paying attention now. And, even that's, what do they say that, if you're not, a Democrat when you're younger, you don't have a heart. And if you're not a conservative by the time you're older, you don't operate.
Yeah, something like that.
But people start, paying the taxes. And if they're, we got cost of living crisis, hopefully we'll get into that in a little bit. But, people are, like, well, where's my money go? And who's responsible for it? And, what party is going to promise this, that, or the other thing? So I think if more people understood the system, they would be more effective, and maybe they show up and vote. I think that's also a concern. We see the amount of people showing up. So 3 things. I think that if you're voting federally, the turnout's higher. And that number goes down as you get down to municipality.
Yes.
But I also see that the numbers are going down, for all elections. And that concerns me as well when we start talking about our democracy and people not being involved in actually exercising the right to vote, which is so important. You said before, figure out what your candidate stands for, understand who that person is, and do they represent the values that you share, and then either go and vote, or write them a check, or volunteer on, whatever, however you feel moved.
Yeah, voter apathy is the death of democracy.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%.
Because that just means people think my vote doesn't matter. I don't understand what's going on. I don't care, and whatever I do is not going to affect the change either, right? Yeah.
Speaking on that, we see a lot of comments, maybe not a lot, but a fair amount of comments that are like, it doesn't matter who I vote for, nothing's going to change. As the party that wants to become government, what would you say to that?
I understand why people say that, because it's slow. The process is slow. I really thought Harper did a fantastic job. So, I'm very proud to work. We called him my prime minister I worked for, and yet people thought, well, we need to get rid of this guy. It's like, why?
Yeah.
And so you see, so then you have for a campaign, right? And you present your ideas, you do your thing, and then they vote for the other guy. Well, for the first few years, and I always thought the other guy was going to be terrible. It's not, people find me 8 years later, hey, you're right. So that's how this process seems slow, because people are catching up and not paying attention, or they're, and things that happened in the beginning. Remember, the economy was still good, right? And then we start talking about pocketbook issues. Then you start talking about how much money I have left in my bank account or left in my paycheck at the end of the day. So every issue will affect somebody differently for whatever reason. And that's why I said it's always important, because your issue, maybe, I've seen people. I remember Marjorie LeBrun, who was one of our senators, worked during the Mulrooney era, and was then, but her life had been affected through lost a child through drunk driving. Became a huge advocate for MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I think that these are important. Those are other ways that you can be politically involved, right? You're with an organization that then could try and affect change. But I think the reason people say, no, it's never going to matter, this is not going to happen, because it moves at a glacial pace, right? So some people said, am I ever going to be allowed to see, what happens, or can I affect change? But I really believe, after spending, 20 years in politics, there's absolutely a way that you can affect change. And if you're passionate about it and you care enough about it and you don't give up, you can make change happen.
Well, and let's talk a little bit more about the cost of living crisis, because right now, just in Ontario, we covered this last night, Ontarians are losing 44% of their paycheck to taxes. It takes until, I believe, the Fraser Institute said
June 13th is what the Fraser Institute says. So you have to work up until June 13th as the average Canadian to start being able to spend your own money. Before that, it all goes to the government.
And that date seems to be moving later.
It does, yes.
It was.
Fraser also said it was around 45%. Right? So 45% is incredible.
Yeah.
When you think about what you spend in taxes, which doesn't even compare to what you need to pay for just a living.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And some of the Western provinces are 46, 47, I believe. So it's definitely hitting Canadians across the country. Looking at, ironically, what Stephen Harper was saying during his last campaign, where Justin Trudeau has no idea what he's talking about when it comes to fiscal policy, and then seeing Trudeau's fiscal policy, if you even want to call it that, implemented over the last 8 or 9 years. What has gone through your mind as you've lived that real time? You knew how he was going to impact Canada, probably from a fiscal policy. Most of the Conservatives did. And he took power. Like, what is that like from your perspective, knowing what's going to happen?
Yeah, because you've worked so hard. You guys worked through the housing crash of 2008.
And worked really hard to balance that budget. Yeah.
And then so hard to balance the budget, and then just to have to hand over the keys to the kingdom, as it were, to somebody who was just completely fiscally irresponsible. Like, mentally, what's that like?
The law and life for Conservatives, right? They get the books back in order, and then they are removed, and the Liberals continue to stand. And again, I think one of the concerns, what I feel is that this government is just completely incompetent, right? And incompetence covers a lot of things. It covers, crime. It covers border security, foreign interference. But let's talk about finances for a bit. I think there wasn't one conservative, you know, at our caucus at the time that believed for 1 second that he would limit his budget deficits to $10 billion. So that's what he claimed. Well, these teeny tiny budgets. I remember Mr. Harper, who was sort of like you mocking, little teeny tiny budget. And so at the end of the day, you know, if they had stuck to that, you know, the knowledgeable priorities, how do you spend the money? We can agree to disagree on those things. That's what elections are about. But what actually happened was, and you guys know this, I know you talk about this, is that this guy spent more money than every prime minister in the history of our country.
Yeah, combined
Together. And so this wasn't just a little bit of, $10 billion of overspending. This was colossal in terms of that. And this has caused so many other issues like inflation. The list goes on and on, rent and housing, mortgage, interest, all those kinds of things. And so, the reality is now is that, these decisions have consequences, right? And so you bring someone in that I really believe is completely incompetent. I can't stress that enough. I don't think these guys could actually run a lemonade stand in terms of what they're able to do it. Yeah, they got the bureaucracy to help them. We could talk about consultants. There's so many things, and there are way too many things to talk about. But, we got this professional civil service, and at the end of the day, how much money has been spent when it came to consultants. So you would think that we would make sure we retain the experts in the bureaucracy to make sure that happened. But we all know we're not even top about that. We've spent billions and billions of dollars on consultants to tell us, talk about things like deliverology. Do we know what that is yet?
No.
I'm trying to figure that out. It's not like you say a bunch of stuff and then you don't deliver it, and then you try and muddy the waters so people think you're actually out.
Well, we did learn what the difference is between a cottage and a chalet is.
Absolutely. So yeah, and for a government that said they would be so transparent, they've been anything but transparent. I think they've been the least transparent government. And it's not me saying. I mean, numerous articles have been written about it. It could be a freedom of information requests that have been delayed. And there's a whole host of things that show and make you wonder, these guys are very serious. So if you start from the foundation that, we're going to just spend the bank and we're going to continue to spend, there's only two ways to fix that, right? The only two ways you can fix that is to cut spending. We're at the large deficits where you tax people more, right? So we're to that stage of taxing people more. And quite frankly, we haven't seen any pullback at all that's noticeable enough that would actually make a difference or any kind of meaningful difference when it comes to government spending. And so that's what we do. We create debt for our kids and for our kids' kids. We saddle them with those interest payments and a number of things. And then what happens is, the government of the day gets defeated, walks away, and then all that mess is left for future governments to try and clean up. So there will be times. I mean, we spent money during the financial crisis, as you mentioned, on infrastructure and things that, quite frankly, needed to be done, that we also felt it was important to run the economy. But once the economy was sort of back on track, we went back to making sure we got the budget balance. So we realized that there'll be times like that. That doesn't mean you continue to spend and you spend uncontrollably forever, right? And that's the accountability piece. And normally in a minority government, you'd expect some of the other parties. Now we've been there. We've been prepared to vote non-confidence forever. But you have to have all the parties in the House of Commons be able to do that, and that's where the NDP has been so disappointing. And I would say that it's reflected in the polls by the number of seats that they're prepared to lose if an election was held today, all things being equal. So they've abandoned their party. They've abandoned workers. They've abandoned the middle-class people that they espouse to represent. And so that's a problem. And people don't forget those things, and they'll have to deal with that at election time.
Well, and when it comes to the NDP, from some of the recent events that have happened in France and how that election turned out, we've had a lot of people come to us concerned about some potential rumors of, what if the NDP and the Liberals decide to kind of split their candidates in the next election and agree to only run one candidate per? What if they merge? On our analysis, we've actually run through those different scenarios. And what we have found is it actually wouldn't really make a difference at all, because you can't assume that everybody that was voting NDP would vote Liberal and vice versa. A good portion of those would actually vote Conservative because they don't want to feel like they're being forced to. So what has the Conservative Party heard about this rumor? Do you guys care?
I mean, we read the papers like everyone does. That's not something we concern ourselves with. I think Pierre is doing a phenomenal job. Like I have never, like, he is one of the hardest working guys. He is the hardest working guy in politics. And I'm just so impressed of how he's out there every weekend, every week during the summer, working hard. He's bringing new people. I mean, I've been to a number of his rallies over time. And what I noticed about his rallies is that there are all kinds of different people there. There's young, there's old. There are different ethnicities. I saw Rich Gore. I saw a couple farmers, and I saw, it's incredible, the diversity. And then young people. I think if you look at some of the millennials that are dealing with these issues of not being able to get out of their parents' base, and not be able to afford homes, not be able to afford rent, there's a whole group of people that maybe never even considered politics before. That's what I think is different. The type of pie, the shape of the pie is different. We were going after, traditional conservative voters. Pierre's created new voters that have never voted before and have never thought about it before because they are concerned about their issue. Whether their issue is housing or affordability. And they feel that Pierre is the only one that's actually got a plan to make that happen. So, yeah, we don't worry about those kinds of things. I personally I don't think the NDP would ever allow them to merge, meaning, yeah, maybe the Liberals would want to do it, but, Liberals are a sinking ship. So I think they would be absolutely crazy if they could go in there. I mean, at the end of the day, Trudeau has actually gone further left than a lot of NDP. I hear that, told to me all the time in my office, like, this guy has been more radical than the NDP at the end of the day. So, yeah, I would think that there are always dangers in the ship, but I just know that Pierre's not concerned about it. Pierre's working hard. Pierre's philosophy is I'm going to outwork anyone and everyone. And at the end of the day, I think that his reward will be the fact that he has worked harder than anybody else, and people see that and recognize that and will support him for that.
Well, and speaking of Pierre, like when we went to his rally, we were shocked that he stayed like hours upon hours just to meet absolutely every single Canadian in that room. I've never heard of a politician doing that before. Since you work for him, like, what is Pierre like as a person?
So Pierre is a very well-researched person. He is a hard worker. We came in together in 2004. So I've got a chance to work on the 20 years. One of the things I know for a fact is that he always does hard. And then, I've already said he's a hard worker. I can't say that. I look at, every week at him out on the road or during the whole summer, he's been out knocking on doors, talking to people. I realize that's a busy time. He's got a small family. Mm-hmm. That takes a lot of work. So he's got a very supportive wife, and they're in this together. But no, I've always been impressed with his work ethic. Like I said, he's the hardest working whip for Parliament.
For sure. Now, back to cost of living. What do you think is the most significant threat to Canada or to Canadians as it results to the cost of living crisis? Because there's so many facets to it. You have housing, you have the carbon tax, you have grocery prices, you have immigration, and we tell everybody we don't blame the people coming in, we blame the policy that is encouraging people to come in.
When we don't have the supports in place to support new people coming in. So
what would you say is the biggest threat?
Yeah, Pierre talks about inflation is, too much money chasing too few goods, right?
Yep.
So the example I use is that we have to simplify this economy. We realize it's more than that. You have 10 apples, and people have $10 to fit.
Not potatoes?
You choose your fruit or vegetable, right? You choose your vegetable. And all of a sudden you've got $10 to buy it. You're probably going to spend it. Once again, this is a very simplistic economy. You only eat apples to survive. You're going to spend $1 an apple. Well, all of a sudden, if you have $20, you only have 10 apples. The cost has then just gone up to $2 an apple. I think that encapsulates what inflation is all about. The government printing money, chasing too much money, chasing too few goods. And Pierre talks about that all the time. He's been talking about that for years, even before it became aware. So this is not anything new. And I'm seeing a number of other people talking about what he's been talking about from years, let's say, no, he's bad about it. He's exactly correct. So I think, getting spending under control is definitely one of those things. And if you look at what's going on, we've got a housing crisis. We got the Libs that said we're going to build a couple million homes, and we're going to do that in short order. But, it amounts to, if you do the math on it, it amounts to about 500,000 homes a year, when the best, and probably one of the best years we've had recently is at 250. So almost double the homes, but we see because everything's so expensive. Right now, what's going on is that people are not even starting homes because of interest rates, bureaucracy, red tape, all these other kinds of things. And so, the spending has got to be one of the largest things. And by that, we also mean, part of what we want to do is, cut the tax, right? Axe the tax. We talk about that all the time. Peter talks about every time we go somewhere. Well, that's part of the reason why people don't have enough money. You get government spending all kinds of money. And as I say, 45% of people's paychecks going to pay just for tax. So that's not even like paying the bills and trying to live. And so trying to figure out at the end of the day what we're going to do to make that happen. There's a lot of waste. You guys have highlighted some in your shows. I'm amazed. One of the things I always found interesting, one example, and I know you've done some close shows just off way. So, you look at the ventilators, for example. That's really, really irked me because they spent, one contract was $750 million. Another contract for, to Frank Bayless was $250 million. They literally spent over $1 billion on ventilators, which all just recently were sold for scrap, $6 a piece.
Oh, wow.
So that is one example of many, and whether we look at what's going on with the environmental slush funds, where you've got people conflict of interest. We only know what the conflicts that have been declared. There's been a bunch of conflicts that haven't been. I know you've not chosen that as well. So the reality is that there is a ton of waste in the system where they have been unaccountable for how they spend your money, our money, tax dollars' money. And I think that's one of the ways that we will, look at trying to get to a place where we start spending less money. And remember as well, all this money that's been spent, as I said, over doubling what was spent. All previous governments and prime ministers for the history of this country, we're now going to pay interest on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And the interest rates have gone up. We've seen a slight tick back in recent months, but it's still not where it was when all that money was being borrowed at 1% and 2%. So
interest rates are at historic lows, Glenn.
So these are all things that we'll need to continue to work on this before. But the government is going to learn to be with it as means. Mm-hmm. We're all expected to do the same thing. It's not always easy to do that, but we have a government that's out of control and not necessarily accountable for how they spend the money. And once again, I go back to the competence issue. This to me is a total issue of incompetence and the fact that they are just throwing things out the door, sometimes with very little or very well-researched facts on how they're going to actually repay for this or how it's going to affect people and what it's going to actually benefit the country.
Well, and we see that with all of the new programs that they put out there, like $10 a day daycare or this pharmacare plan, the school lunch plan, all of this stuff. They seem to not care about any consultation when they're looking at this, the free dental care, not free dental care plan as well. So, and as they roll this out, it seems like all they want to do is spend a little money, announce the program, and then dump all of the work and administration on the provinces to figure it out. And then when it fails, they point at the provinces, especially the ones that don't share their party flag. So what's going to be the difference, do you think, since you were in a majority government under Stephen Harper, as Conservatives look at these programs or look at rolling out new programs? What's going to be that process difference between the two?
Well, I mean, I think, you mentioned something. We'll talk about $10 a day gift. Well, obviously, this is a great thing, but can you execute it? And people have access to it.
Right.
So I think, it's easy. It's a slogan, right? Wade Allison, we talk about that. We talk about $10 a day daycare. I come from mostly rural riding, right? Now here west, we've got some, but even our cities like Beamsville, it's not like a Hamilton. It's not like an Oakville. And so $10 a day daycare doesn't work for everybody.
No.
And if you actually get a place where they do have it, is how are we going to get in the program? Because there's not actually enough people in the program there's not enough programs out there where people can access. So that's a couple solutions. Other solution, it was done. Blacklock's does some great work.
Yes.
They recommend people subscribe. Subscribe to the subscription service. See what it was Holly Doan that posted this article about how they were paying attention to a Senate committee, and the Senate committee were talking about how after 2026, the municipalities would be responsible for any migrants in hotels. In other words, so you hit the nail on the head. They come up with, they make a policy, they do something, and then they dump it on the provinces and municipalities, saying, by the way, everyone's here now. We haven't figured out housing or any of that kind of stuff. But we're now going to walk away from it, and we're going to let the municipalities try and figure that out. I mean, that's tucked away. That's not common knowledge for people. And municipalities are already been around, are already dealing and have a tremendous burden right now trying to deliver services. And one of the things I find, once again, from a rural community, it's always tough. We got lots of roads, we got lots of bridges, and the money that needs to maintain that infrastructure is difficult on a smaller tax base, right? Especially we have a large agriculture sector, obviously a Groudenberg wine industry, but we do tender fruit. It's everything, right? We got some cash crops, we got some supply management, we got greenhouses, we got everything. A great mix of agriculture in my riding. So at the end of the day, if you have a smaller tax base because you're agriculture, and you don't have a huge commercial base or a huge industrial base, then that all falls onto individuals, right? Homeowners. So that makes it very difficult to pay for some of the services.
Well, this is what I think people really need to be aware of is because of that practice of the Liberals. When people start seeing, well, my municipal taxes are going through the roof now, and people are saying, well, that's because of Trudeau. And other people are saying, well, that has nothing to do with Trudeau. It actually has everything to do with Trudeau, because if these municipal governments and the provincial governments are now taking on that burden of these programs because they're forced to, well, who's going to pay for that? The Liberals have said, we're not paying for it, so that's going to fall on the municipalities, and they don't have the capital, so the only thing that they can do is raise taxes, and then here we are.
Well, we saw that back in, sort of back in the 2000s, right, when the federal government made all the cuts, and they needed to make some of those cuts. So that they downloaded a bunch of stuff to the provinces, and then the provinces went ahead and downloaded all, a bunch of that stuff to municipalities. So yes, that's a very true statement. And I think that's always the challenge that people are looking at. So, I think, when you look at, property taxes is a great example.
Yep.
Or development charges. We talked about building the homes, and, that's one of the things, acts of tax go to homes. How do we get that done? Because I've got cities in Niagara that are raising their development fees by over 130%.
Wow.
So that's not much of an attraction. And then I go to a town next door like St. Catharines that just raised the amount of money available through a building program if you were trying to duplex, finish your basement at it. I think those are the kind of policies we need to see, right? I mean, when it comes to housing, at the end of the day, the municipality is going to decide how they're going to make that happen. And that's why Pierre said, we'll reward those that build the homes. For those that don't, that money's going to go to the people that do it. So it's not one size fits all. At the end of the day, people are smart. They're going to figure stuff out. But I mean, if regulation, if red tape is a problem, you got to cut that back. And one of the biggest concerns I hear from developers, from people that are trying to actually maybe renovate their house, is the amount of regulation and red tape that they got to deal with at City Hall. That's always a challenge. That slows down the process and makes it very difficult. So if you have that going on, and then you have something like St. Catharines and say, listen, up to $80,000, I think you just doubled the amount they have. If you help, create more spaces, we're going to reward you by doing that. I think that's brilliant, because if everyone added a unit, it's not possible. But everyone doesn't have that ability. Just think we could double our units overnight. Once again, I realized I already do this. So that's why it's important that the municipalities have that flexibility, because if you're in Toronto and you're already by high-rise buildings, you're not going to add any additional units, to those per se. But if you're in a smaller town, lots of residential lots and things like that, you can do that. So it shouldn't be one or the other. It should be everything, right? They got to pursue everything. We got a major housing crisis, right? And that's costing rent to be high. That's not an issue. As we talk about people that are coming into the country that are on the street, which is embarrassing and quite horrific to look at. So all these things matter in terms of, once again, I talk about competence. This is an incompetent government that doesn't have the ability to manage all these things going on. We give the government our tax dollars, saying, we trust you, right? We're saying, here's our tax dollars. We need you to manage those things that are important, right? Federal government manages immigration, manages, trade, manages, defense. All these things we count on the federal government to look after. If the garbage isn't picked up, I'm not calling the feds, I'm calling the local council to say, once again, you need to do your job. And when that contract is broken and people are frustrated, that's when I want to see people say, I think we need to have some change, change. And that's why I feel that people are saying we need change, because I don't feel I'm getting value for my money.
And I think a lot of Canadians are placing their hope in the Conservative Party right now, at least at the federal level. So what can you do as an MP to ensure that their trust isn't misplaced?
Well, I think, again, I'm going to say this. I think, in politics, we like to say this is the most important election. Really, this is the most important election, right? I don't say that way because this country is on a trajectory for failure. We look at where we are in terms of GDP per capita. Once again, numbers that don't mean anything. We've got, organizations saying, OECD saying that until 2060, we're going to be one of the worst performing countries in the world. Well, think about that for 1 second. Like, once again, without getting technical, our cost of living is going to continue to increase, and our dollar is going to continue to decrease in terms of value we get for it, be it vis-a-vis other countries around the world. That's a problem, right? When we work harder, and there's less and less to show for. So I think, one of the things that, we encourage, like Pierre has got unanimous support amongst his caucus. We all support him completely. We know that he's working hard. He's doing a great job, and we need to, I'll go to Stony Creek and knock on doors and pass the meticulously, great guy, entrepreneur. I'll go next door, to Niagara South and knock on doors with guys like Fred Eves, once again, another entrepreneur, trying to make sure that these people get the support they need. They get out to the doors they need to do so we get more Conservatives elected. So,
you talked about the federal government's responsibility, which includes protecting Canadians from foreign interference from foreign actors. One of the issues that reared its head at the end of the last session was the foreign interference investigation led by Justice Hogue. And everybody was just flabbergasted to learn as a result of that report that there is 11 MPs, either sitting or not at this point, that had found to be collaborating wittingly or not with a foreign state. And one of the things that our viewers are constantly asking is, who are these people? So I know you don't know, but we also see, we read a story the other day about I believe it was an assistant to a governor down in the United States was just arrested and charged.
Governor of New York.
Right. So we look down at the United States and we see people actually being arrested and charged for this type of collaboration.
And held accountable.
But Canadians see that looks like nothing happens in Canada. So I guess the question is, will we ever learn, you may not be able to answer that, but will we ever learn the identities of these 11 MPs, and will Canadians ever see accountability?
So, I think, once again, axe the tax, build the homes, stop the crime. Right? It's like, these are the things we hear. These are why they're part of our priorities in this upcoming election. I would love, I'm not sure I want to know the names, but I think that the names need to be released because this is what transparency. Mm-hmm. And we know that certainly people were affected in other elections where, whether it changed the outcome or not. I think it probably did in some seats. As a result of that. But, at the end of the day, how can anyone treat Canada seriously, first of all, with all this foreign interference is going on, and secondly, if we're not doing anything about it? And so I think it's completely unacceptable that we don't know 10 names. We need to know these names. We need to get them out because that's part of that. And the Liberals are notorious. Once again, they talk about transparency, and they don't deliver any transparency. You remember what happened when it came to the Wuhan. Yeah, I thought it was on Wuhan.
Yeah.
And we were trying to get information. No. Once again, members of Congress, we get this information in committees and all those kinds of things. And the fact that we're stonewalled on these issues, I think is completely unacceptable. And it shows bad faith from a government that, believe me, has got something to hide if they're not willing to share those. You think if there was a bunch of Conservatives on that list, they wouldn't be happy to share those things?
Well,
we've speculated, yeah.
And the reality is that this government promised to be more transparent, and they've been anything but transparent. And at the end of the day, foreign interference is an issue, not just amongst elected people, but in universities, businesses, all that, it goes all the way through. And we need to take these things seriously because we're in a world that's, is very close to, and we operate very closely with a number of different countries. And we have got to figure these things out because it does affect national security at the end of the day.
And seeing all of the difficulties that the opposition has had holding this government to account, is that going to potentially prompt the Conservatives of introducing new laws in order to allow the federal government, whomever it is in that is governing, to be held to account more easily?
Yeah, we've always, supported the law and justice. Stopping the crime is not just, a slogan. It's something that we are very serious about when we look at what's going on out in the community right now, as an example. But I think that that'll always be something to be important to us to make sure that we have a clean house as well.
The media says that a lot of people are only voting for the Conservatives because they hate Trudeau. And I think
there'll be some.
Yeah.
Not all. And not the majority. There'll be a few that say, hey, I've had enough of these guys. We need to give these guys a shot. And why I love that is because that gives us a chance to prove to them that we will do what we say. And I remember with Harper, we had 4 or 5 things that we talked about, and we implemented all those things right away, or within the first little while, because we thought it was important to we be able to keep our word.
And so many Canadians are seeing, Trudeau's now appointing senators to the Senate, and there's concern. Well, that's going to be able to block the Conservatives from executing their agenda, and we know that there are many ways to implement what you guys want to do, without any issue. So, what would you say to Canadians that are either considering voting Conservative, they're on the fence, or those that have decided to vote Conservative, but they're really concerned about the optimistic future of Canada? What do you say to them?
Well, I say that it's important. So once again, I think Pierre's now working hard. He's got more people that have never been involved in politics, considering, supporting, showing up to rallies. He's taking the time to spend time with them. But I think that we can fix this problem. We can fix it. It's not going to happen overnight, right? It's not going to happen the next day. But I think that Pierre understands the way the economy works. He understands what we can do to slow and reduce the inflation piece, which that's a tax, right? Because that's absolutely something that affects your paycheck. Even though it's not a tax, you can afford less as a result of it. And I think that as we start to implement these things, people being able to feel safe is important. We look at where crime has been over the last. We look at what's happening with drugs in hardcore. I see it in Vancouver and in Brantford, of all places.
Really?
Vending machines, for crack pipes and things, and for right places. I just read this week. And so I think, as we start to knock on these things, remember, repeat violent offenders are the ones that continue to reoffend. I think I saw the stat today, they were almost a third of people out on bail committing homicides. That of all homicides that have been committed, a third were people out on bail. Well, that's crazy. We all know stories in our neighborhoods. We see what happened at the Peach Festival last week, which was, very scary.
Yeah, I was there, actually.
So, once again, repeat violent offenders that continue to do that. What's going on with car thefts? This government took way too long. And think about that. You see a car theft being up 200-300% over lower levels. That's because, these people are out of bail. Sometimes people are stealing cars 2 or 3 times a day, right? And be able to do that. And who pays for that? You and I pay insurance, who covers that, and all our premiums go up as a result. So it's very important to have law and order. It's very important to live within your means and deal with the budget. It's very important to give people more money in their pockets so they can afford some of these kinds of things. And we do all that by fixing the budget, right? That's what we do. We make sure we fix the budget to a point where we have a chance to put priorities back to where we need today, right? We go after law-abiding hunters and fishers, right, with guns. But a lot of times, most of these issues coming in right now are coming through our borders, right? A lot of illegal guns coming from the States. We look at what we see the other day. We fought, a couple of terrorists into the country, right? They were actually going to commit a heinous act. And what did we find out? We got the information from the French intelligence.
Yeah.
The thing about that is the federal government we expect the federal government to look after our borders. We've seen almost 200 or 300 terrorists trying to re-enter the U.S. from Canada as well. So these are all things that we can work on simultaneously. So once again, if people feel safer, they have more money in their pockets, we could start moving the budget to ways so we can reduce the cost of living and to make sure that people can, the inflation, we can get it in check. I think that people see over time, they'll have more money, they'll feel that the government's got the best interests and are actually trying to keep them protected. And I think, Canadians are pretty fair and decent people, right? But we always feel that if we play by the rules, we should be able to own a home. We have a good job, we do our thing. And I think that when people don't see home, meaning everything gets under control, that's when you talk about that doom and gloom, people are concerned. But I really believe under a Pierre Poilievre government, we're going to start working on these things to start to right the balance. We've done it before. Previous to Sir Rideau, Harper did a great job. People have more money in their pockets with him as a government. I know Pierre, the man of his word, and he'll be doing exactly the same thing, giving people hope. And I think that's the encouraging thing, right? Well, Pierre's been holding this Liberal government to account. He's also been giving people hope. You know how all these people showing up at rallies just to say, oh, man, this guy's done a negative speech. This guy is giving people and saying, listen, these are the things that we're going to do to make your lives better. And so, again, I say, whether the NDP decide to not support this Liberal government in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, or we go the rest, the whole year, I know Pierre and his team will be ready to implement these things to have people's lives get back on track.
Mr. Allison, thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, thank you. Thanks for what you guys do as well.
Thank you.